The stone was cold and hard beneath her knees, a relentless truth that seeped through the thin fabric of her uniform. Each push of the brush, each swirl of the rag in the soapy water, was a prayer. Make me invisible. The grand ballroom of the Ashford packhouse was a riot of light and sound above her, a celebration for the engagement of her bonded mate to someone else. Crystal glasses chimed. Laughter, sharp and bright, sliced through the air. She focused on the grit on the marble, the single dropped berry from a dessert tray. Her world narrowed to a square foot of floor. The scent hit her first. Not the perfumes of the nobles, but his scent. Cedarwood and crisp night air. It cut through the party smells like a knife, and her head jerked up instinctively. Theron stood 20 feet away, dazzling in his formal jacket, one hand resting on the lower back of Celeste Morningstar. He was smiling. Aria's heart gave a pathetic, traitorous thump. The weak, thin thread of their one-sided bond pulsed in her chest, a constant aching hum of mine and not mine. The memory crashed over her, sudden and vivid. Not a clean flashback, but a sensory assault. The dark, close air of the storage closet, the rough shelves digging into her back. His mouth on hers, desperate, his hands cradling her face. You are my heart, Aria. My true mate. Just give me time. I'll make them understand. Soon. His breath was hot against her skin, his promise a brand. She had believed him. She had clung to those words in the dark, in the cold of her cot, for 5 long years. A different pain, sharp and immediate, exploded across the back of her head. Stop gawking. You stupid girl. Head housekeeper Margot's voice was a venomous hiss in her ear. The woman's fingers, hard as talons, dug into Aria's shoulder. You think this floor will clean itself while you dream of things you'll never have? Move. The vision of Theron shattered. Aria's eyes stung, but she blinked rapidly, bowing her head so low her chin touched her chest. The laughter from a nearby group of finely dressed betas wasn't for her, but it felt like it was. Their scorn was a physical thing, a layer of filth over her skin no soap could wash off. She scrubbed harder, the brush rasping over the stone, trying to erase herself. She was given a tray of champagne flutes next, the crystal so delicate she feared her rough, work-reddened fingers would crack it. The order was silent, delivered with a shove toward the high table. Her feet carried her forward, each step a mile. The bond in her chest pulled, a taut, agonizing wire drawing her to the man at the center of it all. She offered the tray. Celeste took a glass with a murmur of thanks, her eyes gliding over Aria without seeing her. Then Theron reached out. His fingers brushed hers as he took his glass. A jolt, electric and nauseating. Her gaze flew to his face, a silent plea she couldn't suppress. He looked right at her. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met, and in that cold, flat blue, she saw nothing. No recognition, no secret warmth, no promise. Just the vacant look one gives a piece of furniture. The thread inside her didn't just go slack. It screamed, then went silent. A death. Before the tray could slip from her numb hands, that same familiar grip closed around her wrist. Theron's touch, once her everything, now felt like a manacle. He pulled her smoothly, discreetly, through a servant's door hidden in the paneling. The humid heat of the kitchen swallowed them. He pushed her into a shadowy alcove by the pantry, away from the busy scullery maids. Her body, stupid with hope, leaned into him. This is it. Now he'll explain. Now he'll fight. It ends tonight, he said, his voice calm, quiet, and utterly final. All the air left the room. What? The bond, Aria. This fantasy. He adjusted his perfect cuff, not looking at her. I'm rejecting it, publicly, in a few minutes. The words made no sense. They were sounds that bounced off the sudden, howling void opening inside her. You promised, she whispered, the sound raw. You said soon. I know what I said. For the first time, he met her eyes. His held a pity so profound it was worse than hatred. And I meant it then. But I was a boy dreaming. This is the real world. Look at you. His gaze was a physical sweep, leaving a chill where it passed. You are Omega. You scrub these floors. You will always scrub these floors. What kind of life is that for a Pax Luna? I need a queen, a partner, an equal, not a maid. He said the last word softly, as if it were a kindness. Surely you understand. She didn't understand. She understood nothing except the cracking apart of her own bones from the inside. 5 years of waiting. 5 years of stolen moments in dusty rooms, of his whispered vows against her neck, of believing the bond in her soul meant something. It had all been a story, she told herself while on her knees. He took her elbow, his touch impersonal. Come, let's be done with it. He led her not back to the shadows, but straight onto the dais where the musicians played. He raised a hand. The music died mid-note. Hundreds of faces, curious and glittering, turned to them. Celeste's smile was poised, intrigued. Friends, honored guests, Theron announced, his voice ringing with alpha authority. Forgive this disruption. A minor celestial correction must be made. He pulled Aria forward, his hand on her arm like he was displaying a flawed product. It appears the moon goddess briefly misplaced her senses. A bond formed, with this servant. A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a wave of tittering laughter. Aria felt the heat of 100 stares branding her skin. I, Theron Ashford, hereby reject Aria Thorne as my bonded mate. The words were formal, absolute. They carved the heart from her chest with clinical precision. The bond was an error. It is void. My heart, my future, belongs to my true equal, Celeste Morningstar. The applause was thunderous. Celeste's smile widened, triumphant. Cameras flashed, capturing Aria's devastation in high definition for the social feeds. The laughter grew louder, crueler. She stood there, unmade in the blinding light, until some primal survival instinct kicked in. She wrenched her arm from Theron's loose grasp and ran. The sound of her own sobs was deafening in the silent stone throat of the servants' staircase. She hit the door of her shared room, fumbled it open, and collapsed onto her narrow pallet. The world had ended. The bond was gone, leaving a cavernous, sucking emptiness in its place. She was untethered, floating in a void of her own shame. The door opened later. Leela, her roommate, stood silhouetted in the dim light. She took in the wreck of Aria on the bed. A long, slow breath hissed out of her. "Oh, Aria," she murmured, and there was a trace of real pity there, which somehow made it worse. "You really thought an alpha heir would choose an omega? Sweetheart, we're the furniture." The door closed, plunging Aria back into dark silence. She lay there for 3 days. The world outside her door moved on. The pack celebrated. Theron and Celeste planned their future. The floors got dirty and were cleaned by other hands. She was a ghost in the cellar, dissolving into regret. On the 3rd day, the door slammed open so hard it shook the wall. Margot stood there, but her usual fury was bleached white by panic. "Get up!" she screeched, yanking the thin blanket away. "Now, the Triplet Kings, the Silvercrest Royals, are here, unannounced, demanding sweets." She threw a clean, stiff uniform at Aria. "You are on their direct service detail. You will be a shadow. You will speak no word. You will not breathe too loudly. If you so much as think a thought that displeases them, I will personally throw you to the border wolves." Margot vanished, leaving the order hanging in the cold air. Aria sat on the edge of her cot, the rough cloth in her hands. The Kings, the legendary, terrifying triplet alphas who ruled the far northern territories with absolute power. It didn't stir fear in her hollow chest. Nothing could. Serving them, displeasing them, it was all the same. An end was an end, She pulled the uniform over her head, the coarse fabric scraping her numb skin. She had no way of knowing the world had just stopped turning for 3 other men the moment she crossed the packhouse threshold, and that their storm was about to rewrite her ending. The hallway to the royal wing was a different world. The stone here was smoother, the air colder, smelling of polished metal and a strange, wild frost. Aria's heart was a frantic bird against her ribs. In her arms, she carried a stack of linen sheets so high it brushed her chin, each one bleached white and starched stiff. Her orders were simple. Enter, place the fresh linens in the dressing chamber. Leave. Do not speak. Do not look. Do not exist. Her mind replayed the kitchen whispers. They say their eyes are like glacier ice. They haven't taken a mate in 2 centuries. An Omega spilled wine on Prince Dante's boot once. They never found her body. Her palms were slick with sweat against the crisp fabric. She reached the double oak doors, carved with runes that hummed under her fingertips. Taking a shuddering breath, she balanced the linens in one arm and turned the heavy iron handle. The suite was vast, a cavern of gray stone and rich furs, lit by a massive fireplace. And they were there, the Triplet Kings. Damon stood by the fireplace, his profile sharp as a blade, staring into the flames as if reading destinies in the embers. Dante was at a table, fingers tracing a map, his brow furrowed in concentration. Drake was nearer, leaning against a post by the window, gazing out at the territory with a stillness that felt more dangerous than motion. 3 massive, powerful, terrifying alphas. The air itself bent around them, thick with dominance. Aria's knees almost gave way. She kept her head so low her neck ached, scurrying toward the open door she assumed led to the dressing room. Just be a shadow. Just be air. She took 3 steps inside. The world exploded. It was a detonation in her soul, a resonance so deep and violent it tore a gasp from her lungs. The linens tumbled from her nerveless fingers, scattering across the polished floor like fallen clouds. It felt like a hook behind her sternum, yanking her forward. No, 3 hooks, each one burning, claiming, anchoring. The weak, pathetic thread she'd had with Theron had been a frayed piece of string. This was a cage of live wires. This was truth. In the giant shirt, her feet still in her cheap servant shoes, was carried along by their certainty. The packhouse staff they passed froze, eyes wide, before scrambling to bow or press themselves against the walls. The sounds of the ongoing engagement celebration grew louder as they approached the main ballroom. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses, the sight of her annihilation 3 nights prior. Without breaking stride, Damon and Dante each pushed open one of the grand ballroom doors. The music died with a screech. The laughter cut off mid-peal. Hundreds of heads turned. The entire Ashford pack and their guests stared, glasses half raised, mouths agape. At the center of it all, holding a glass of amber liquor, stood Theron. His smile for Celeste melted away. His eyes locked on Aria, wrapped in the king's shirt, flanked by the 3 most powerful beings on the continent. His face drained of all blood, leaving him white as the sheets she'd dropped. The horror in his eyes wasn't just recognition. It was the dawning, terrible understanding of what he had truly thrown away. She was rejected in front of hundreds. They claimed her in front of everyone. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was a living thing, thick and stunned, broken only by the crackle of the great hearth and the ragged sound of Aria's own breathing. She stood trapped in the doorway, a spectacle wrapped in another man's shirt, surrounded by 3 living legends. Every eye was a brand. Theron took a stumbling step forward, his champagne flute dangling from limp fingers. His face was a mask of bewildered horror, but his alpha training clawed its way to the surface. He forced a brittle, respectful bow. "Your Majesties," he began, his voice too loud in the quiet. "1,000 apologies. There appears to be a misunderstanding with one of our staff. Please allow me to have this servant removed so your evening isn't further disturbed." This servant. Damon's voice cut across the room, cold and clear as shattering ice. Is our mate. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words carried a weight that made the very air shudder. Choose your next words, Heir Ashford. Very carefully. As if his words were a command, the space around Aria and the kings began to shimmer. From her chest, 3 distinct cords of luminous light erupted. One silver like frost, one deep gold like embers, one the blue of a storm-racked sky. They snaked through the air, connecting her heart to each of theirs. The mate bonds. Not the hidden, feeble thing she'd shared with Theron, but blazing, undeniable truth, visible to every wolf in the hall. A collective gasp sucked the oxygen from the room. Whispers erupted, sharp and panicked. Celeste Morningstar, beautiful in her ivory silk, brought a hand to her mouth, her face turning a sickly green. Theron just stared, his jaw slack, at the glowing tether connecting Aria to Drake. Impossible, he breathed. The evidence seems rather possible, Dante said, his tone lethally calm. He took a single step forward, his golden eyes pinning Theron where he stood. Let us recite the facts. You bonded with our mate. You kept her a secret for 5 years. You used her comfort, her devotion, her body. The word was a lash, while letting her scrub your floors. And then, 3 nights ago, you publicly rejected her. You called her a mistake. You said she was beneath you. Each accusation was a hammer blow. Theron flinched with everyone. He looked frantically at his father, the Pack Alpha, Meku had risen from his seat, his face ashen. She's Omega class, Theron blurted, the defense weak and shrill. The bond was wrong. Aluna must be an equal. I needed a true partner. Drake moved then. Not toward Theron, but closer to Aria, his shoulder brushing hers. His voice was softer than his brother's, but it carried a finality that silenced the room more completely than a shout. She is your equal, he said, his storm blue eyes never leaving Theron's crumbling face. She was always too good for you. You were just too blind, too poisoned by your own pride to see it. The words were a balm and a brand. Aria felt them sink into her soul, healing and scorching at once. Then the kings moved as one. Damon's hand settled on her left shoulder, fingers flexing possessively. Dante's palm came to rest on the right side of her neck, his thumb stroking her jaw. Drake's arm wrapped around her waist from behind, pulling her back firmly against his chest. They surrounded her, a fortress of muscle and might and glowing bonds. Their voices blended into a single, powerful harmony that vibrated in the stones. Stay behind us, always behind us. We protect what's ours. Damon raised his gaze to the stunned, silent crowd. Hear this. Aria Thorne is no servant of the Ashford Pack. She is Luna Queen of the Northern Territories, bonded to the Silvercrest crown. She leaves with us tonight. She will never serve anyone again. The Pack Alpha, Theron's father, finally found his voice. Your Majesties, the alliance between our packs, the trade agreements. Surely we can discuss this privately. His voice was a mix of panic and strained diplomacy. Dante turned his head slowly toward the older Alpha. The warmth he'd shown Aria was gone, replaced by a glacial contempt. You allowed our mate, our queen, to scrub your floors, to be slapped and scorned in your house. He let the image hang, let every guest remember the Omega girl with the brush. We consider that a personal insult to the crown. All prior agreements are now under review. Your pack's worthiness is in question. The threat was not of war, but of something worse. Irrelevance, economic ruin, a death by slow, cold exclusion. From the crowd, head housekeeper Margot stumbled forward, her face a greasy pale. She fell into a deep, trembling bow, her forehead nearly touching the marble. My queen, she whimpered, the title strangling her. I beg your forgiveness, I never knew. I was only doing my duty. The kings didn't even look at her. Damon spoke to the air above her bent head. Our mate does not accept apologies from those who abused her. His eyes scanned the room, taking in every noble, every sneering beta, every servant gaping from the corners. She is above you now, all of you. With that, they turned. Still encasing her, they guided Aria back through the doors. As they passed, the crowd broke. He searched her eyes, letting the immensity of it sink in. And that, he finished, the vehicle speeding into the dark, changes everything. They called it a palace. She called it a prison made of gold, until she discovered the darkest secret the kings had been hiding. The Silvercrest Palace was a mountain of carved ice and gray stone, piercing the northern sky. Inside, it was all soaring arches, roaring fireplaces, and riches that made the Ashford packhouse look like a shed. Aria walked on carpets thicker than her old mattress. She touched tapestries that told stories of ancient wars. She was shown rooms larger than the entire servant quarters. But her omega senses, sharpened by a lifetime of watching for danger, tingled. A servant carrying a tray would take a long corridor, and then suddenly pivot away from a certain arched passageway. A door of black iron, triple locked and flanked by 2 stone-faced guards, stood at the end of the west wing. No one went near it. No one even looked at it. And the kings? They were everywhere. Damon on her left, pointing out a historic sculpture. Dante on her right, explaining the lineage in a portrait. Drake behind her, a warm, constant presence. If she slowed, they slowed. If she looked too long down a forbidden hall, a large hand would gently steer her shoulder away. "The palace is vast, little mate," Dante would say, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Easy to get lost in." "Stay with us," Damon would murmur, his fingers lacing with hers, not as a lover, but as a keeper to ice. Then Drake agonized. "She'll hate us when she learns the truth, that we needed her specifically. That the bond wasn't just fate, it was a target on her back from the moment she was born." The words were a physical blow. Aria stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. Needed her specifically. Not just fate. The bond, the instant recognition, the rescue. Was it all a calculation? Had they scented not their mate, but their cure? Rage, hot and bitter, burned through the ice. She shoved the door open. 4 faces turned to her. The 3 kings and a wizened old man. The royal advisor. Guilt, panic, and despair flashed across their features. "What truth?" Aria's voice was terrifyingly quiet. The kings looked at each other, a whole conversation passing in a glance. Damon stepped forward, his face a mask of pained resignation. "The Silvercrest bloodline carries a curse. Every generation, the triplet heirs must find and bond with a blessed-born mate before their 30th birthday. Or they die. We have 2 weeks left. We've searched for decades," Dante added, his voice hollow. "When we scented you in that packhouse, we knew what you were. The bond formed because you are blessed-born. It wasn't organic. It was necessity." The world cracked open. Aria felt the pieces of her new life, the fairy tale, slice her hands as they fell. "So none of this is real?" The whisper tore from her throat. "The claiming? The protectiveness? You don't actually want me? You just need my bloodline?" "It started as necessity." Damon surged forward, his eyes blazing with desperate emotion. "But the moment we touched you, spoke to you, felt you, it became real. Aria, look at me. We love you." She didn't believe him. She saw the timeline now. The urgent rescue, the rushed claiming, the locked wing they kept her from. She turned and ran. Her feet, guided by a terrible new instinct, carried her through the labyrinthine halls, past startled servants, down the cold, unused corridor to the west wing. The guards at the black door moved to block her, but one look at her face, the fury of a wronged mate, made them hesitate. She shoved past. The door was locked, but the ancient wood around the old iron bolt was splintered. She threw her weight against it. It gave with a groan. The smell hit her first. Dust, yes, but underneath, a faint, sweet scent of decay and old fear. The corridor was lined not with rooms, but with cells. Small, windowless, and in each one, a skeleton. Some still in tattered dresses. One clutched a faded blanket. Another had scratched marks into the stone wall, a tally of days. They were all small-framed. All Omega. All wearing the faded remnants of servant rags from different eras. A prison for blessed-born girls. A graveyard. A choked sob escaped her. She wasn't special. She wasn't chosen. She was the latest model brought in for a doomed experiment. A replacement for the bones lying at her feet. Aria! The kings burst into the corridor behind her. Their faces were ashen with horror, but not at the skeletons, at her seeing them. You're monsters, she spat, the words trembling with revulsion. You collect women like objects and kill them trying to break your curse. It's not what you think, Drake yelled, his voice cracking. Our ancestors did this. The previous kings. We swore we would never continue it. We waited. We searched for a real bond, a true mate. You are not a tool to us, Aria. You're our salvation and our choice. She stood between the living kings and their dead failures, the bond in her chest pulling her toward them with a maddening physical ache, while every cell in her body screamed to run. She didn't know what to believe. The evidence of centuries was etched in bone around her. Before she could speak, before she could scream or collapse, a royal guard skidded into the death wing, his armor clattering, breathless with panic. Your Majesties, emergency at the gates. Damon didn't turn, his eyes locked on Aria's shattered face. Not now. It's Theron Ashford, sire. He didn't come alone. That name sliced through the tension. They all turned. The guard swallowed, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. He brought the Inquisition. They are claiming you used dark magic to force a false bond with the servant girl. They demand the Omega's return. And they demand the execution of all three of you for bond manipulation. They put her mates on trial for loving her. She had to choose. Let them die, or become the monster they needed. The Inquisition did not arrive with an army. They arrived with scrolls, silence, and a cold, ancient authority that made even the palace stones feel afraid. They were judges from a time before kingdoms, their faces hidden by deep hoods, their presence sucking the warmth from the air. The trial was not held in a court, but in the main courtyard, under the bleak gray sky. It was broadcast on enchanted crystals to every major pack and den in the supernatural world. Aria's second public humiliation. But this time, she was not alone in the center. The kings were. Damon, Dante, and Drake stood in the middle of the yard, bound not with ordinary chains, but with spelled silver that smoked against their skin. It leached the color from their faces, dampened their alpha aura to a faint glow. They looked contained, powerless. The sight made Aria's stomach clench. Theron stood before the lead inquisitor, a tall, gaunt figure, his voice dripping with poisoned triumph. They used forbidden magic, he declared to the watching world. They scented a blessed-born servant, a weak Omega, and saw a tool to break their family curse. They manipulated the very threads of fate to fake a bond and save their own lives. Evidence was presented like bones tossed on a table. Descriptions of the Deathwing. The history of the Silvercrest curse. The pattern, cold and logical. The conclusion is inescapable. The lead inquisitor intoned, his voice echoing unnaturally. For generations, the Silvercrest kings have seduced or kidnapped blessed-born females. They attempt the tripling ritual. When it fails, as it always does with a false bond, The females perish. They dispose of the bodies. They search for the next. This Aria Thorn is not their mate. She is their latest victim. Then it was her turn. Forced to stand alone in the space between the chained kings and their accusers. The Inquisitor's hidden gaze felt like insects on her skin. Did you know about the bloodline curse when they claimed you in the Ashford ballroom? Aria's voice, when it came, was small but clear in the silent courtyard. No. Did they tell you of their necessity for a blessed-born? She looked at Theron, his eyes gleaming with vindictive joy. She looked at her kings, their faces etched with shame and a deep, resigned sorrow. No, I thought the bond was real. I thought... Her breath hitched, the confession hurting more than any lie. I thought they wanted me. The Inquisitor nodded, as if she'd proven his point. He turned and pronounced the words that turned the world to ash. Damon, Dante, and Drake Silvercrest are guilty of willful bond manipulation, a crime against nature and the moon goddess. Sentence: execution at dawn. The false bond with Aria Thorn will be severed by our blades. She will be free to find a true, untainted match. The crowd gathered at the edges. Nobles, guards, servants erupted. Some cheered, convinced justice was being served for the murdered Blessedborn girls. Others cried out in protest, pointing to the visible, though dimmed mate bonds still connecting the four of them. Bonds that looked real, even shackled. Aria didn't hear them. A war raged inside her. The kings had lied. They had needed her for the curse. The proof was in a locked wing of skeletons. But the bond in her chest, even now, pulled. It was a physical ache toward them, a heartstring stretched to breaking. It felt more real than the ground beneath her feet. She begged to see them before dawn. In the dark, damp dungeon, she found them in separate cells, the spelled silver making them weak. Damon reached a trembling hand through the bars, his proud head bowed. We're sorry. For lying. For the Deathwing. For not being worthy of you from the start. In the next cell, Dante pressed his forehead against the iron. The bond was necessity at first, but we fell in love with you, Aria. Truly, deeply, desperately. That part is the only truth that matters. Drake, in the last cell, gave her a tired, gentle smile that broke her heart. Let us die knowing you'll be free. That you'll find a mate who chooses you for the right reasons. That's all we want now. Their acceptance of death was absolute. No rage, no last-minute schemes. And in that moment, Aria understood. The final, devastating truth. You're not fighting this, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. You're letting them kill you, because you won't force me to complete the ritual. You'd rather die than coerce me. All three of them looked at her, their eyes full of a love so profound it was a physical force in the foul air. We love you more than we fear death, Damon said. Your choice matters more than our survival, Dante breathed. Always, Drake finished. The shattered pieces inside Aria clicked together, forming a new, unbreakable resolution. Love could start in many ways. Hers for them had started in betrayal. Theirs for her had started in necessity. But here, in the shadow of the axe, it had become the same thing. A choice. She stood up straight, wiping her tears. You need a Blessedborn to break the curse? Her voice no longer shook. Fine, you have one, and I'm doing this my way. She stormed back to the Inquisitor in the courtyard, the first hints of dawn bleaching the sky. You claim the bond is false, that the ritual would fail. Then let us perform it. Right here, right now. If it fails, your sentence is carried out by the moon goddess herself. If it succeeds, you admit you are wrong and they go free. The Inquisitor, confident in centuries of bloody precedent, agreed. The execution courtyard became an altar. The kings were dragged to the center, their silver chains keeping them on their knees. Aria walked to them, the eyes of the world upon her. She took a ceremonial dagger offered by a confused guard. She looked at her three mates, at their faces filled with dread and a desperate, fragile hope. She drew the blade across her palm. Deep. The blood welled, dark and glittering with a faint inner light. Blessed-born blood. She went to Damon first, offering her bleeding hand to his lips. "I choose you," she said, her voice ringing clear. Curse, lies, and all. He drank, his eyes swimming with tears. She went to Dante. "I choose you." He drank as if it were his first taste of water. She went to Drake. "I choose you." As their mouths closed over her wound, black, vicious marks on their chests, the curse began to glow like hot coal. Aria's blood ignited in their veins. Then the power erupted. It was not beautiful. It was violence. Agony ripped through all four of them. Aria screamed as ancient, cursed magic and her own latent power collided inside her, using her body as a battleground. Visions assaulted her. The terrified faces of all the blessed-born girls who came before, their pain, their confusion, their stolen lives. But beneath that torrent of fear, she felt other things. Damon's genuine awe the first time he saw her. Dante's quiet joy hearing her laugh. Drake's unwavering certainty that she was theirs. The feelings were real. The love was real. It had grown in the dark between the lies, and it was stronger than any curse. "I choose you," she roared at the sky, not to the kings, but to the magic tearing her apart. A shockwave of pure, blinding light blasted out from them. It threw the Inquisitor, Theron, the entire crowd off their feet. The silver chains on the kings shattered like glass. The black curse marks on their chests cracked, turned to ash, and blew away. The triple mate bond exploded into view, no longer dimmed, but blazing like three suns connecting them. Undeniable, glorious, and complete. Then the energy reversed, sucking back into Aria. The curse, broken, had a final cost. She collapsed, every breath a knife, her vision darkening. She had absorbed the poison to destroy it. "No!" The king's screams were raw. They caught her as she fell, their arms trembling. "No, no, no, you saved us, but you're dying. Please, Aria, stay with us." She looked up at their three devastated faces, a strange peace settling over her. She smiled, a tiny, bloody thing. "Worth it," she whispered. "You're worth it. Love you, all three." As her eyes started to close, the kings moved as one. They placed their hands on her, their foreheads touching hers, and poured their life force, their alpha strength, their very essence, back into her through the blazing bond. A triple thread of sustenance, love, and desperation. The bond accepted it. It flared once more, and Aria gasped, a sudden, shocking breath filling her lungs. Life rushed back in, but it was different. It was shared. Her eyes flew open, seeing not just with her sight, but with a flicker of Damon's perception, Dante's clarity, Drake's instinct. "I can feel you," she breathed in wonder. "All three of you, inside me. We're not just bonded. We're merged." The Inquisitor staggered to his feet, his hood thrown back to reveal a face pale with shock. He stared at the four of them, at the vibrant, undeniable bonds that hummed with shared power. His voice, when it came, was stripped of all authority. "The bond is real." The ritual succeeded. The kings are innocent of bond manipulation. Theron stood frozen, his revenge crumbling to dust around him. His look of smug victory had melted into utter devastation. He hadn't just lost. He had watched her choose them, save them, become one with them, right in front of the whole world. The Inquisitor turned on him, his anger finding a new target. "Theron Ashford, for false accusation against the crown and wasting the Inquisition's time, you are under arrest." As guards moved toward Theron, Celeste stepped back from his side, her face a mask of disgust. "I want nothing to do with this." she announced loudly to the crowd before turning and walking away. His own father, the pack alpha, turned his back, disowning him with a single brutal gesture. Theron was dragged away, his eyes full of a bitter, endless regret, locked on Aria until the very last moment. The kings stood, their strength returned tenfold. They immediately surrounded Aria, helping her to her feet, their hands gentle but their poses fiercely protective. "Stay behind us," they said in unison, their voices a blend of love, relief, and an unwavering promise. But this time, Aria didn't feel like a sheltered secret. She felt like the heart of the fortress. She felt like a queen. And as they led her away, the crowd hall of the Silvercrest Palace had never seen such an assembly. Every noble, alpha, and dignitary from across the territories had come. Not out of mere duty, but out of burning curiosity and dawning fear. They came to see the Omega servant who had become a queen, the Blessed-born who had shattered a curse and merged her soul with 3 kings. Aria stood before the towering stained-glass window depicting the moon goddess. She did not wear Ashford's servant gray. She wore the deep, shimmering blue of the midnight sky, a gown that seemed woven from starlight and shadow. It was not a dress meant for kneeling. It was a dress meant for ruling. At the base of the dais, in cells of spelled iron just visible through a grated floor, the remnants of the old world watched. Disgraced nobles, traitors. And in the darkest cell, in hunched and hollow-eyed, Theron Ashford. He was not executed. His punishment was to witness, to see every moment of the glory he had tossed away for the rest of his long, miserable life. The ceremony was not just a coronation. It was a binding. Damon placed the circlet of winter silver upon her brow. Dante fastened the cloak of office, embroidered with 3 intertwining crests, around her shoulders. Drake placed the scepter of fused unity, a rod of gold, silver, and platinum woven together, into her hand. As each item settled, the bond between them flared, visible to the entire hall. 3 cords of brilliant, living light connecting heart to heart to heart. A display of power so intimate it was dizzying. "Aria Thorne," Damon's voice boomed. "Blessed-born, heart of the triple bond, savior of the Silvercrest line. Do you accept the mantle of Luna Queen?" She turned to face the silent, waiting crowd. Her gaze swept over them, the proud, the skeptical, the awestruck. She saw servants peeking from the upper galleries, their eyes wide. She saw her former head housekeeper, Margot, trembling near the back, hoping to be invisible. "I do," Aria said, and her voice, amplified by the hall's magic, was clear and unwavering. "And with this acceptance, I enact my first law as queen, the law of bonded acceptance." A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. "From this day forward," she declared, her eyes finding the servants in the gallery, the low-ranking betas and omegas in the room. "No wolf shall be punished, shamed, or disowned for the mate the moon goddess chooses for them. No bond between an alpha and omega, between a beta and an alpha, between any class or rank, shall be deemed inappropriate or a mistake." Theron, in his cell, let out a soft, broken moan. Aria continued, the words pouring from a deep well of her own pain. "For too long we have assumed we know better than the goddess. We have let pride and tradition break what she forged. I was told my bond was a cosmic error. I was told I was beneath my destined mate." Her voice thickened with emotion. She felt the supportive surge from her kings through the bond, giving her strength. "We do not know her plans. We do not know what power, what destiny she hides within the hearts of those she pairs. To reject her choice is to reject her wisdom, to spit in the face of fate itself." She lifted her chin, the crown feeling not heavy but right. "Therefore, let it be law. All bonds are sacred. All bonds are to be accepted. Anyone who forces a rejection, who interferes with a fated pairing, will face the crown's justice. Love is not a matter of class. It is the goddess's will. And who are we to argue with a goddess? The silence that followed was profound. Then, from the upper gallery, a sound started. It was a single stifled sob from a scullery maid. Then a slow, steady clap from a young beta guard in love with an omega weaver. The applause spread, not from the high tables first, but from the back of the hall, from the lowborn and the dreamers, growing into a thunderous wave that shook the very foundations. Aria looked at her mates, her kings, her heart. In their eyes, she saw not just love, but a fierce, blazing pride. As the applause finally subsided, she spoke one last time, her voice softer now, but every word a promise that settled over the realm. The moon goddess does not make mistakes. She makes possibilities. She does not give us the mates we want. She gives us the mates we need to become who we were always meant to be. She turned, and her 3 kings moved as one to stand behind her, their hands coming to rest on her shoulders, her waist. A united front, a completed circle. "Stay behind us," they murmured together, their voices a vow for her and the entire world to hear. And Aria, queen of the Northern Territories, blessed born, mate to 3 alphas, smiled. She was not behind them. She was with them. Finally, forever, and exactly where she was meant to be. If you listen to this romance story from the beginning to this end, you are my true subscribers, and if you are yet to join Moonshadow Tales Pack, hit that subscribe button and take a front row. Subscription is free. See you next week.